Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. It is Tuesday, August 6th, and the world continues to wait for this promised Iranian Axis attack on Israel. And it's been about 5 days now, folks. Actually, about a week, really. That was last Tuesday night when the news broke, Tuesday night U.S. time, when the
Here are the
news
top
broke
five.
that Israel had eliminated top overall Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. And earlier, last Tuesday, earlier in the day, Israel eliminated Hezbollah commander Fuad Shukr in Beirut. Now, I should have mentioned a reminder that Haniyeh was taken out in Tehran under the noses of the Iranian regime, his hosts. So ever since, for a week now, we've been hearing about these threats of revenge from the Iranian axis, and everyone expects this is coming. As we reported yesterday here in the newscast, Iran apparently told diplomats that it has contact with it. Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to strike Israel, or at least try to strike Israel. So the moment is upon us. Now, is the moment now? Some have said it's going to be on the 9th of Av, which would be Monday, August 12th. That has great significance, obviously. That was the day, a few hundred years apart, where both Jewish temples were destroyed and the Jewish people were exiled from the land of Israel. First, the Babylonians destroyed the temple, and then Solomon's temple. And then in AD 70, the Romans, led by the general Titus, destroyed the second temple, often known as Herod's temple, where Jesus taught, chased out the money changers. So we don't know when this is coming, folks, but I've been saying over the past few days that for me, sitting here in the United States, it's been maddening. Watch this all unfold. And I don't know how you feel about this, but for me, it's been a solid week where the entire world has said, oh my gosh, Iran and its proxies, the Iranian ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides, they're going to attack Israel. And every day we're checking and waiting and watching to see if Iran struck yet, if the attack, the promised attack, has begun. To me, and call me crazy, and I'm going someplace with this, we've got some pretty good information from on the ground in Israel that I want to share with you. But for me, it would make much more sense if someone is planning to strike you, strike them first before they get the chance to strike you. And that's why it's been maddening to me to see Israel having to sit around and wait for this Iranian attack, and then Israel can respond. And the reason for that is the Biden administration. You might say, oh, you're getting political. It's a fact, folks, that the Biden administration, not only in April, the last time Iran directly attacked Israel on April 13th, 2024, but now has been telling Israel, we will help you defend, key word there, defend against any Iranian attack. But if you dare strike Iran first, Israel, if you go on the offensive, then you won't have our support. So that's the situation Israel's been dealing with. It's really a disgrace on the part of the American administration. But some great info. And I want to get into the sonic boom. Someone just asked in our chat, what about the sonic boom? It's the lead story in the title, I know. But folks, this bears sharing first. I just sat down with our good friend Yahya Pinto. Now, if you know the channel, the Watchman channel here on YouTube, then you're probably familiar with Yahya's channel. And if you aren't, you need to get familiar with it. He heads up the TBN Israel channel right here in Israel. I believe it's at TBN Israel. And Yahya Pinto does incredible work as our TBN Israel correspondent out of Jerusalem. Also was a spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces. He served in Gaza, just got out of Gaza about 4 months ago. So very well connected, obviously, knows what he's talking about, knows what's going on, has his ear to the ground, on the ground, literally. He's actually here in Dallas with me right now. We just filmed an entire episode of Stakelbeck tonight. Here's what he shared with me. And this is why I want to share this first off the bat. I said, Yair, I'm getting frustrated. Israel's sitting around and waiting to be attacked, and the world is pressuring Israel to sit around and wait to be attacked instead of going on the offensive. He said, Eric, hold on a second. This is not going to be like April 13th. Yair said, and again, very well connected. He's plugged in on the ground in Israel. He said, look, and I said, you sure you can say this on camera? He said, yes. On April 13th, Israel waited, right? We knew Iran had launched over 300 projectiles, rockets, missiles, attack drones. And it took a few hours for some of them to actually reach Israel. Thankfully, miraculously, keyword there, 99% of them were shot down. It was a miracle. This time around, Yair said, look, as soon as Iran fires one missile, Israel's going to strike. And it's going to strike Iran. It's going to strike crucial facilities in Iran, perhaps military, perhaps oil facilities, perhaps water infrastructure. Now, that's Yair sharing that, his take. That's not me. Erick Stakelbeck reports it's exclusive. It's not me. I'm sharing with you what a very credible source, someone I believe is a very credible source, Yair Pinto, who heads up the TBN Israel channel here on YouTube. Incredible work. Israel Defense Forces spokesman, very plugged in IDF circles. That's what he shared with me. Look, Israel's not going to stand pat. Once Iran pushes that trigger, then Israel will respond, which is different than April 13th. Two important things here. Different than April 13th in that 5 days after that, I think it was April 18th, Israel responded, and it was a very limited response. Just one airstrike in Natanz, near an Iranian nuclear facility in Natanz, so it had symbolic value, but overall, it was not the kind of response from Israel that served as a deterrent to Iran. And if it was, Iran wouldn't be planning to attack Israel again, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But Yair said, look, this time Israel will respond to the Iranian attack. And quickly. It's not going to be a situation 5 days later. It's going to be like in real time. And I thought this was very important, folks, because I'm saying, look, the 6-day war lesson. Israel in the 6-day war, another miraculous victory. Israel struck first. Egypt, Syria, and then Jordan were massing on Israel's borders. Like now, everyone knew the attack was coming, and Israel struck them first, destroyed the Egyptian Air Force while it was still on the ground. It never got in the air. The war was effectively over in the opening hours because of preemptive action. That was 67, 6-day war. Contrast that with 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Israel knew it was coming, or some will say they did. Some will say Israeli leaders did know. Some will say they didn't know. But it was a surprise attack. And look, Israel's enemies made major gains in the early days of the Yom Kippur War. Israel eventually turned the tide and ended up with a resounding victory there with Cairo and Damascus within range for the IDF, within its sights. But I believe over 2,000 Israeli soldiers lost their lives. That's a heavy, heavy price for a tiny nation like Israel to pay. So that was the difference between preemption, 1967, and acting first in 1973. But here's the key, folks. If Israel, and there's been rumblings, and we reported this over the past few days, there's been rumblings that Israel may strike first, may strike preemptively. If Israel does not, I believe it would be for this reason. Because the world will howl and say, Israel, you attacked Iran, or you attacked Hezbollah. You started this, Israel. Whereas if Israel waits for the rockets to start flying from Iran, and then Israel reacts overwhelmingly, Israel can say, hey, they fired first. We're just responding. We're defending ourselves. We're responding to this provocation. I know it's a sad state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen, but that's where we're at in the world right now, where the entire world is trying to restrain Israel from taking decisive action against genocidal forces that want to wipe it off the map. Really. So you're supposed to stand around and wait to be attacked and then not respond. That was April 13th, right? Joe Biden told Benjamin Netanyahu, you got the win, take the win. You were attacked and it wasn't a successful attack. So you know what? Just let sleeping dogs lie. The problem with that is Iran became emboldened. And Iran said, we got away with it. April 13th, in one sense, was a resounding dud. 99% of those projectiles shot down. In another sense, listen, it was important in that Iran took notes and said, wow, no one really reacted. Yeah, they hit us in the tons, but it wasn't a devastating response from Israel. We got away with it. And we know from the public statements of the Biden administration that they're tying Israel's hands. and telling Israel not to respond or not to attack preemptively and threatening Israel, we've got free reign. Listen, folks, whether you like it or you don't like it, I'm going to put to you like this. The United States is still looked at by the world as the leader of the free world. And I know the current administration doesn't act as such. I get it. But when the United States is weak, it leaves a vacuum for the world's worst actors to fill. And weak men create hard times. And we're seeing this throughout the West right now. Iran is not frightened, is not nervous about the U.S. They're emboldened. They took notes on April 13th at the non-response and the U.S. pressure of Israel to non-respond. That's why they're doing this again, and they'll very likely try to do it with greater force and magnitude this time around. So clearly, the people of Israel in the north and the south, highest of high alerts, and we're going to talk about the sonic boom in a minute and what that meant today over Lebanon, Israeli fighter jets. And we want to talk about can you use the word ascension to the top leadership post in Hamas, descending, I should say, in this demonic death cult known as Hamas, but Yahya Sinwar, the Osama bin Laden of Gaza. Just in case you thought Hamas, well, maybe Hamas will moderate. And I don't think our viewers would think that, but some very naive members of the mainstream media and the Western diplomatic corps would certainly suggest that, because they painted Ismail Haniyeh as a moderate, a chief negotiator in ceasefire talks. But in case you thought Hamas may change or have a change of heart, they're doubling down. Hamas just named the Osama bin Laden of Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, as the replacement for the not so dearly departed Ismail Haniyeh, who was taken out in Tehran last week. This is Hamas. Sinwar is the face of October 7th. He masterminded it. So Hamas just named the mastermind, a genocidal, barbaric butcher, as their top overall leader. If you've been following Hamas since its inception, like I have, you shouldn't be surprised. They're doubling down, folks. And there's no turning back. Hamas is a genocidal jihadist organization that exists to destroy Israel. So we'll talk more about the ramifications of Sinwar too. People of Israel right now, needless to say, on highest of high alert. We don't know what Iran's going to do here. Will it target civilians? Russia, Putin, apparently urging Iran not to. More on that in a minute, Russia's role here in helping Iran. But listen, right now, Israel could use a few good friends. It goes without saying. And we like to try to fulfill that biblical mandate here on the Watchman of blessing the people of Israel and assisting the people of Israel as laid out in the book of Genesis, chapter 12, verse 3. That's why I want to tell you about our sponsor today, my good friends, Magen David Adom. You've heard me talk about Magen David Adom over the past few weeks, folks, and that's for good reason. This is Israel's emergency services system. This is it. Right now, Magen David Adom is getting in place and preparing for this Iranian attack. It may be an onslaught. We don't know. We pray that nothing happens. We pray for a miracle like we saw on April 13th. But nevertheless, Israel must prepare. And Magen David Adom, look, folks, some facts here for you. You want to bless and help Israel? Magen David Adom responds to every terror attack in Israel, bar none. Every time there's a terror attack in Israel, Magen David Adom ambulances are on the scene. They're literally doing God's work. Every heart attack, every car accident, any kind of tragedy in Israel or major accident, Magen David Adom is there. They collect, process, and distribute the entire blood supply in Israel for civilians and the Israel Defense Forces. Since October 7th, 30 Magen David Adom volunteers have been killed in this war. 17 Magen David Adom ambulances have been destroyed. These folks, these brave volunteers in Magen David Adom are putting their lives on the line to save lives. They're risking their lives to help others. It's incredible, putting themselves in the line of fire. I see them every time I'm in Israel. Magen David Adom ambulances, they are there on the ground. It's SaveLivesIsrael.com. That's SaveLivesIsrael.com. You want to bless Israel? Magen David Adom, Israel's emergency services system. Sometimes we partner with certain organizations who I love. People might ask, Erick, are you sure that they're really doing good work for Israel, that they're really in the mix, that they're hands-on, that anything I do, if I donate to this organization, that it's getting in the right hands and really blessing Israel? You don't have any such questions about Magen David Adom. This is Israel's emergency medical services system. And you know that in this war, that maybe in the next 24 to 48 hours, maybe a war, maybe we don't know, you know that Magen David Adom is on the front lines. They'll be first on the scene. I'm proud to partner with this organization, proud to have them as a sponsor, honored to have Magen David Adom, these brave men and women, these brave, the finest of Israel, as our, some more numbers for you. 90% of these 35,000 EMTs, paramedics, and first responders of Magen David Adom are volunteers. And folks, here's a need. They need ambulances, bandages, and medical supplies. They're stretched thin right now, responding to attacks from Hamas and Hezbollah, preparing for an Iranian ring of fire onslaught. SaveLivesIsrael.com. You feel, if you're not in Israel and you feel kind of helpless and you're frustrated, how can I help? SaveLivesIsrael.com. That is how you can bless Israel for such a time as this. Magen David Adom. Check them out. Let's talk about the sonic boom today. And this is important because it was Israel sending a message, I believe. Now, today, number one, 5 Hezbollah terrorist operatives were taken out in an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon. Important. Number 2, Hezbollah fired some 30 rockets today at the Galilee region and the Golan Heights. So the low, people call it a low intensity. I call it a very intense, high intensity war that's gone on since October 8th between Israel and southern Lebanon, or I'm sorry, and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. It continues. It persists. That's why today in Beirut was so important. Here you go from the Times of Israel, just reading this straight off my phone. Israeli jets today, folks, set off sonic booms in Beirut just as Hezbollah leader Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah was going to start speaking and giving a fiery, vicious, venomous anti-Israel speech, once again, threatening the world's one and only Jewish state. Israeli warplanes broke the sound barrier over Beirut earlier today, just ahead of Hassan Nasrallah's speech, as northern Israeli residents of northern Israel, were told to stay close to bomb shelters. This is life in northern Israel. This is why Magen David Adom is so important. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Bomb shelters as Hezbollah is launching these attacks and threatening even perhaps ground incursions into northern Israel. But with the sonic booms, these are caused by Israeli planes flying low over Beirut. They were intended, Nasrallah said, as a provocation. But the loud booms, again, I'm reading this straight from the Times of Israel, sent residents of Beirut rushing to open their windows to prevent the glass from shattering, or standing on their balconies to get a glimpse of the planes flying over. So clearly, a message from Israel. Why over Beirut? Number one, before Nasrallah speaks and makes this threat, but why over Beirut? Obviously, listen, this is the capital of Lebanon, and the southern suburbs of Beirut. Hassan Nasrallah may very well be hiding out there. We don't know. He moves from place to place. He has for the past 18 years since the last Israel-Hezbollah war, the second Lebanon war. But message sent that if, and there have been some rumblings, that Hezbollah may strike first before Iran strikes, and we don't know. But if Hezbollah tries to attack Israel in some major way, Beirut will be on the table for Israel, no doubt. And Israel has said, Israeli leaders, both military and political, have said this for years, that, okay, if Lebanon is hosting Hezbollah, if Hezbollah has essentially built a state within a state, and look, the Lebanese government, the Lebanese army aren't doing anything to stop Hezbollah. And by the way, Hezbollah is the most powerful force in that country regardless, but they're doing it from Lebanese soil. then Lebanon will also pay a price. Hence, sonic booms over Beirut. Again, message sent. So this is the moment we're at. Now, speaking of the moment we're at, and look, Iran, it's pretty certain, will employ this entire ring of fire this time. And that includes rockets, missiles, drones from Iranian soil. Last time it was over 300 projectiles on April 13, 2024. This time we're hearing rumblings of over 1,000 rockets, missiles, 1,000 drones. Staggered over a few days potentially. We don't know. But Israel, key point here, and if you're just joining us, folks, at the top of this live stream, I shared my conversation with Yair Pinto, TBN Israel correspondent, heads up the TBN Israel channel here on YouTube. Check him out at TBN Israel. And Yair shared, look, Erick, Israel is not going to sit around. Not saying Israel is going to strike preemptively, but Israel's not going to rest on its laurels and just allow these, and God willing, we'll have a repeat of April 13th in that rockets, missiles, drones will all be intercepted. 99% on April 13th. Miraculous. Miraculous. What are the odds? We're intercepted. And hopefully there's a rerun of that. But Yair made a key point. This time, Erick, we're not going to sit around and wait. We're not going to sit around and let this happen. We're going to strike back. Iran will face consequences, serious consequences this time. And Iran needs to face, in my view, deterrence type consequences, meaning Iran will never, ever, ever think to do anything like this ever again. Despite the U.S. restraining Israel, the U.S. administration, I should say, not the people of America, who, despite some demonic whack jobs on college campuses, are still overwhelmingly supportive of Israel. But our current administration in D.C. is very problematic in tying Israel's hands and attempting to restrain Israel at every turn. And yet, Israel has to at least consider what's coming out of D.C. because Israel relies on America for armaments and ammunition and diplomatic support at places like the UN. Now, ultimately, and I want you to join me in prayer for this, ultimately, Israel needs to rely on the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and put God above man. It'll work for you every time. God above man. Don't have fear of man. Put your faith, your trust in God. So I ask you to join me in praying for Israel's leaders right now. I keep saying for the wisdom of Solomon and spines of steel and boldness and the courage to do what's right. But that entire ring of fire, and you can almost guarantee, I'd be shocked if the Houthis in Yemen don't get involved. Remember, they are still licking their wounds from a few weeks ago when Israel carried out a major, major strike on a port in Yemen used by the Houthis that caused a massive explosion. And that didn't happen in a vacuum. Israel was responding to a Houthi drone attack, which killed one Israeli in central Tel Aviv. And again, with Hezbollah unilaterally launched attacks on Israel, began launching attacks on October 8th, the day after the October 7th massacre. So we have Israel again responding. We have Israel responding to October 7th, responding to the Houthis, responding to Hezbollah, responding on April 13th to Iran, although not a big response. So what do you think, folks? We have a very educated audience of watchmen and women on the wall. Is it time for Israel to go on the offensive and be preemptive? What do you think? We've been waiting around now for a week. I don't want to say waiting around, but can you imagine being in Israel right now? You're on pins and needles. Are missiles and rockets and drones going to start flying tonight? I've got kids, right? You're in a bomb shelter. What do we do? Were we going to spend the next week in a bomb shelter? This is no way to live. And you know it's coming. So do you strike first? And Yair shared earlier, look, once those Iranian rockets start flying, Israel's going to strike. Because then, again, Israel can say, we didn't start it. They launched first, we responded. We shall see. But you can bet on that entire ring of fire, Syria, Iraq as well. And folks, did you see yesterday the Ain Assad Air Base in Iraq? Several U.S. service members wounded in a drone attack carried out by Iranian proxies there, these Shia militias in Iraq. So the state of play is this, that the United States wants no part of any sort of conflict. The United States government, the current administration, they want no parts of this. They are all in, committed to appeasing Iran. And let me tell you right now, folks, right now, if Iran said, give us $10 billion and we'll leave you alone, the current U.S. government would do it. Give us give us what we want, and we want to attack. We'll leave you alone. We won't attack. The U.S. government would be bribed, extorted into doing that. That's how weak they are, our current leaders here in the U.S., and how adverse they are to any sort of confrontation. Weak men create hard times. No one wants a war, but a great man named Ronald Reagan once said, you'll have peace. You won't have war. You'll have peace through strength. And if you're projecting weakness left and right, time and time again, and saying, please don't hurt us, we'll give you anything you want. And if you're creating daylight with Israel publicly for all the world to see, then you're inviting war. You're inviting attacks. There's a reason. Donald Trump, you might not like him, you might love him, whatever you think of him. He certainly projected strength in his 4 years in office, and there were no wars. Peace through strength. And when he did act, well, crushing ISIS, the caliphate, taking out Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian terror master, taking out the leader of ISIS, Omar al-Baghdadi, when he acted, he did so decisively. And the world took notice. Contrast that with the past 3.5 to 4 years under Joe Biden. Major war in Europe, major war in the Middle East, and an even bigger one perhaps coming in the Middle East. You may not like me saying that. You're getting political. I don't like Donald Trump. Okay, you may not like him, fine. But you can't deny what I just said. The world was a more stable place between January 2017 and January 2021, much more stable than it is now. And I believe that comes down to leadership or lack thereof. Speaking of leadership or lack thereof, Yahya Sinwar, what do you think, folks? To me, it's a giant thumb in the nose to the world by Hamas. Ismail Haniyeh killed last week. Yahya Sinwar, the Osama bin Laden of Gaza, now named as top overall leader for Hamas. Now, Israeli officials are doubling down. They're saying, man, even more proof. We need to take this guy out. And Hamas needs to be just wiped off the map because they're a demonic death cult. And Sinwar needs to go. And look, he's scurrying around in tunnels beneath Gaza right now as we speak. I believe Israel will eventually get to him. But he's now the top overall. He's the face of Hamas. This demonic butcher who has killed people, by the way, with his bare hands. Do a little bit of research, folks. He's killed people strangled people with his bare hands, so-called informants who collaborated with Israel, probably innocent people, just innocent people who he murdered in cold blood. He's a stone-cold killer. He's now the top overall leader for Hamas. In case you had any doubt whether this organization is evil and needs to be crushed, because there's a lot of doubt on college campuses and major U.S. cities where people are marching, waving Hamas flags and saying Hamas are freedom fighters. But I want to share that with you. Yahya Sinwar, now Hamas's top overall leader. Hey, we don't want to go without mentioning two things either. Russia. Now, I mentioned yesterday that Sergei Shoigu, we talked prophetic implications. We talked the war of Gog and Magog, laid out in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. And we see Russia, the former defense minister, still a top military official of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, in Iran over the last 2 days, meeting with top Iranian leaders. Folks, the timing is no coincidence. In Iran, now, when Iran is literally about to strike Israel, he chooses now, this top Russian defense official, to visit Iran very publicly, photo ops, the whole 9 yards. And Russia is reportedly supplying Iran with air defense systems to defend, I presume, against Israeli airstrikes. Russia has made its choice, and it has sided with the enemies of Israel and the enemies of God and the enemies of the free world. You might say, you're crazy. Vladimir Putin is Russian Orthodox. Yeah. Do you see any sort of Christian witness coming from that man at all? Do you really think this is a man who walks with the Lord and walks a Christian walk on a day-to-day basis? No. There's a reason that Russia is his government, not the Russian people, but his regime is persecuting evangelical churches, Bible-believing churches in Russia. We've talked about this on the newscast. There's a reason this so-called defender of Christianity is in bed with the world's largest persecutors of Christianity, North Korea, China, and the Iranian regime. So please, if I hear one more comment that Vladimir Putin's Russian Orthodox, stop. The man is a friend to the enemies of Christianity. And he's cracking down on any church that isn't Russian Orthodox within Russia. Wake up. He's evil. And he's in bed with Iran, North Korea, and China. Well, there's a great movie called Cool Hand Luke back in the day with Paul Newman. I used to watch it with my dad. And there was a memorable line, some men you just can't reach. I guess so, because we still have the Putin choir that still comments. I shake my head, but I digress. He's made his choice, and he's all in with the enemies of Israel. And if you're all in with the enemies of Israel, which is God's people and God's land, then you're all in against God Almighty. And I believe Russia, and I don't know if Vladimir Putin will be the leader. I don't know when it's going to happen. But I think prophetically, Russia, Iran, Turkey will be the head of that Ezekiel 38-39 Gog-Magog invasion force that comes against Israel in what Ezekiel calls the latter days. So this does not surprise me that Russia is making that choice. And let me ask you this question. If and when Israel, say, crushes Hezbollah, hits Iran, what does Russia do? Hey, these are Russia's compadres. These are Putin's pals. Iran, the Assad regime in Syria, Hezbollah, he's shoulder to shoulder with them on the battlefields in Syria, Russian soldiers. He's not going to be very happy if Israel embarrasses them once again and they come out of this with black eyes and bloodied noses and even more than that. And neither is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, another, and Turkey again, in that Gog-Magog force, who just last week threatened to invade Israel, the leader of Turkey. And again, I don't know if Vladimir Putin, I don't know if Recep Erdogan, I don't know even if Iran's current leader, Khamenei or Pezeshkian, the new president, will be at the helm when this happens, these prophetic events. Maybe different leaders at the helm at that time leading these nations. But I can tell you this, the chess pieces are moving on the board, man, and they're getting into position. Last thing to mention, very interesting today, talk about Iran not being afraid of the United States. And I'm sad to say that as an American who loves my country. But today, the Department of Justice in the United States announced that a Pakistani national with ties to Iran has been charged in connection with a foiled plot to assassinate a U.S. politician or government official. The defendant, again, linked to Iran, allegedly traveled to New York City to hire hitmen to murder a politician or U.S. government official on U.S. soil. His name is Asif Merchant, also known as Asif Raza Merchant, 46 years old, Pakistani descent, a Pakistani national with close ties to Iran and is straight out of the Iranian playbook, a murder for hire plot. We've been talking here about Iran's threats to assassinate President Trump and other former Trump administration officials on U.S. soil, no less. This is what happens. Weakness invites this kind of aggression by the world's worst actors. And we've said that, and we've said it some more. But until the U.S. really shows strength and takes the pressure off of Israel and allows Israel to do what it needs to do, we'll continue to have these problems and these kinds of provocations from the likes of the Iranian regime. Folks, we'll see what the next 24 hours bring, 48 hours. We're on top of it here at The Watchman. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. If you like what you're hearing, click the notification bell. We've also got, look, I mentioned Yair Pinto, who's in studio with me here in Dallas today. We've got a nightly show, folks. If you like what you're seeing here on YouTube, every night on TBN, the Trinity Broadcasting Network, it's the world's largest Christian television network. My brand new show, Stakelbeck Tonight, every night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air every night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. Check us out over at TBN, Stakelbeck Tonight. We've also got a Stakelbeck Tonight YouTube channel. Yeah, we've got a second channel. We're pretty busy. At Stakelbeck Tonight. That's at Stakelbeck Tonight. Subscribe there as well for clips from the brand new show covering all these issues, why it all matters to you, and unapologetically from a biblical perspective. Keep all of this in prayer. Prayer works, and now more than ever, it is needed. So prayer warriors, rise up for such a time as this and make your petitions clear to the Lord. Thanks so much for joining us here today on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.